welcome to the program. I'm Lana Kay, and I can't help but be excited about today's show because we'll be talking about my favorite city. Yes, my hometown of Florence, Kentucky. And with me are two men that know an awful lot about this city. Please welcome to the program Mike Rouse. Welcome to the program, Mike.
Thank you, Lana.
And Perry Reniker. Welcome, Perry.
Thank you, Lana.
Mike and Perry have some things in common. They have both been lifetime members of Hopeful Lutheran Church, of which their ancestors came here from Virginia and settled. They also are both members of the Boone County Historical Society. Mike has just been elected our president, and Perry and I are both members. But today we're going to be focusing on a book that Mike co-authored with Tim Moore, and that is the Book of Florence, from the Images of America series. So now we're going to let Mike take over and tell us, how did you and Tim first, Mike, become interested in wanting to do the book on Florence?
I think we both realized that so much of the local history and the landmarks that was Florence when we grew up were disappearing, that people who had recently moved into the city really did not have a feel for what historical Florence was like, and the younger generation did not realize the vitalness of Main Street as it existed when we were growing up. And we wanted to preserve and share with other people the Florence that we knew, the Florence, a historical Florence,
as baby boomer kids
Yes.
that grew up there. And so, Mike, the book takes us from its early days.
It takes us from the war between the states, the 1860s, up until about 1960. That was our stopping point because at that time I-75 went through Boone County, and as it went through, it changed the whole viewpoint from Main Street Florence out to 75 and eventually the Florence Mall. So it ends around 1960.
Okay. So then, so I know that the older history of Florence is so important to you, and today you want to begin by discussing some of that older history. Where
Right.
would you like to start?
Right. Our first chapter actually deals with John Uri Lloyd, who gave Florence its nickname of Stringtown. He wrote several books. He was a famous chemist also, but he wrote several books dealing with northern Kentucky, and his most famous probably is Stringtown on the Pike.
Of which we're holding a picture right now.
Right. The Lloyd Library in Cincinnati was founded by him and his brother, actually two brothers, and they left all of their historical notes of growing up in Florence, plus other, their personal libraries. And we went to the library and researched some of his notes, some of his newspaper articles, the interviews that he gave in the early 1900s, and found out that he acquired the name Stringtown for the book from, as he said, he saw the city, the town of Florence, strung out along the highway, and that's why he called it Stringtown. And he also said that he did not choose the name Florence because he thought it sounded too Italian.
Yes. I can't really, I never associate that. But he says here, I love the dusk of that old pike, meaning old Lexington Pike that stretched clear through the south to Florida.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and it's now Dixie Highway, and parts of old Lexington Pike are still there.
Lana?
Yes.
I remember seeing him when I was a kid. He was quite older man. When I was small, he was kind of frail, but his home was right on Shelby Street there in Florence. And I remember seeing him, and I remember they had the Lloyd Society, and they all met there. But it got tore down, and a post office was put in there, and I think the United Way is there now.
Yes, yes. Okay, Mike, so who's next? Who's very important? I know that Mike is also a former school teacher, so teaching is very important to you too.
Right, and one of the
school
chapters,
systems.
one of the chapters dealt with Florence High School, which in those days was really the center of the community. Whether you had students involved in the school or not, you were involved with the school. The nickname, they were the Florence Knights, and the girls were known as the Florence Nightingales.
Right.
Can you remember that, Perry?
Yes, I remember the girls.
This is a picture of one of the basketball teams from Florence High School, Florence Knights, in the mid-30s.
Now, is Perry in that?
No, he's a little later.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to show his picture.
But he was a captain of the basketball team, were you not?
1946
maybe we'll
and
show-
47.
Okay, I have a picture that I had enlarged, and maybe we'll let Perry then. Mike's talked about the earlier team, and now here's Perry, and he's number 7.
Yes, and there's one person in particular on there, Billy Ray Marksberry.
And
He's over in, I think we could
you
point
know what
it-
number he is, Perry?
He's number 17,
Okay.
and he became really one of the top 50 doctors in the United States. I think he was a brain surgeon, but right now, the last I heard, he's teaching up at UK. But I was always proud of him. He was on the same basketball team with us.
And many of you will recognize, here is Rector Jones, and he went on to become superintendent of Boone County school system. And I don't know who this is, Perry, but it looks like the Fonz.
Didn't see the
Who's
picture
that
again.
setting?
That's Harold Zimmerman on the end. He's the manager.
Harold Zimmerman was the manager. And I love, from a woman's perspective, the cheerleaders, and that's Bobby Smith and Margaret Odell and Beverly Marksberry. I think they're darling at the bottom of the picture.
Bobby Jean married Don Roberts, the fire chief, for years here in Florence.
So many of the people that we see then went on and had romances and became married.
Right.
Okay, Mike, what would you like to talk about next?
Well, when you talk about the Florence school system, I think you invariably have to think of A.M. Yaley,
Oh, absolutely.
who was, for easily the first 50 years of the 20th century, was a driving force in Florence. He was in many ways a Renaissance man.
Yes.
He farmed. He was mayor of Florence. He established the Wildwood Boater Inn, and he was the driving force in getting Florence High School accredited by the Southern Association. There's a picture, a picture of Mr. Yaley in his early days. He also taught at the Limerberg School and other rural schools in the county.
And he has an uncanny resemblance to Joel Osteen, who is on every Sunday morning and has become a very big evangelist. And when I saw that picture without the mustache, very looks like Joel Osteen.
Yes. There is a picture in here also of the first Florence graduating class, which was in 1915,
1915.
which I think
Now,
is
Perry, that's
a very elegant
I don't remember
picture
that.
of the first 4 graduates of Florence High School. They were accredited in 1911, so this class was the first class to outgo all 4 years and to graduate from Florence High School.
very good. Well, we have with us now a picture that many of you that grew up in the 60s, Perry will let you talk about this. This is Martin Brothers Garage. Everybody went to Martin Brothers Garage. I can hear my dad saying, well, I'm going to get an oil change and a grease job. I don't even know if you get a grease job anymore at Martin Brothers. And also his tune-ups. I'm going to get a tune-up. So, Perry?
Well, it was most popular garage around. They had these huge wreckers. Nobody else had wreckers like they did, and they got most of the jobs when there was a wreck. It was Martin Brothers Garage that came and took care of it. And it was kind of a hangout for people. A lot of guys sat up there and traded knives and
Yeah,
things like that. And it was just a popular place.
And Perry, as we're speaking of wrecks, something happened to one of your cousins.
Yes, Robert Reniker Miller. Robert Reniker Miller was my first cousin.
He's
And,
at the bottom of the page.
and he graduated from Florence High School in 1945, but he didn't actually, he wasn't there for the graduation. He left and joined the Navy. At the graduation, they just had a picture of him up there. And he joined the Navy and took his basic training, and then he went on a ship and he went to Japan. And he was guarding the ship one day, and somebody, Japanese or somebody, snuck on there and tried to do something to the ship. And Reniker captured him or shot him or something, but anyway, he didn't want to talk much about it when he come back. But he was born in 1927, and he died in 1951, and he was only 23 years old. And in his lifetime, he was a Boy Scout and became a patrol leader, senior patrol leader and became an Eagle Scout. And then after he served in the Navy, he came back and worked and got his pilot license out at the airport, and we would all go flying with him, and he was working for his commercial license. But in between there, he joined the state police and was on the state police for a couple of years. And the day before he died, I was with him, and he got promoted to detective. And the day, it was February the 14th, 1951. It was the last ice or snow of the winter, and he was headed for Williamstown, and he called and reported that the roads were bad. But up in Devon, he went around a turn maybe a little too fast or something happened. He slipped and went in front of a utility truck, and they didn't have seat belts in those days, and the door flew open, and he come right down on his head and was killed instantly. It was the first big tragedy in my life because we were real close friends.
And first cousins.
And first cousins, yeah. And he did all those things, and he's only 23 years old.
In a short time.
And it says in there how many people was there.
Many state troopers came from all over the state, and like 3,500 people attended his funeral, so it was quite a tribute. And Perry, talk to us a little bit about, since we've got this page open, you have to tell us about Wendell Cooper. And Mike Wendell Cooper appeared in this book. I think he holds the record.
I think he holds the record for...
He's on his tricycle, then he's on his two-wheel bicycle. He is a small child with his dog, and then this big picture is in there of, he is showing the first person that was inducted into our jail.
Well, Wendell Cooper, he was kind of a frail kid, but he always wanted to be a state policeman, but I don't think he was passed physically. But he, as far as the department and the state trooper or something, that's what he wanted to be. But he worked out there in the state troop, in the Florence office, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the reason I think that he appears so often in the book, he and his mother and his grandmother lived there on Main Street, took a lot of pictures, and they kept all of them, and his picture collection was a great archive for the book.
Yes. And so, Mike, then how did you go about getting all the pictures for the book? How did you solicit?
Most of them, we visited people whose families had lived for a long time in the Florence area, or had expressed general interest in Florence history, and they shared with us their family pictures. Some of them, there's a picture of the Oddfellows Hall, which is the Stringtown restaurant today, that I had not seen that picture that appears of the building around 1900. That was I think one of the greatest finds.
Really? Great.
I don't think this picture had ever appeared before.
Before the book?
Before the book, yes.
Something on that picture that said Reniker Realty up there somewhere.
Yes, there was the stage curtain on the second floor. There was a stage, and this backdrop curtain listed advertisers from the Florence area, and it was Reniker, yes.
I had to put that in, you know.
Sure.
Okay, now we're going to talk about a building that, it just was the cornerstone of Florence. When it burned, it was such a tragedy to all of us that had grown up in Florence. It's never been the same, and it is the Meyer Building. And I know that you'll recognize that it was on it covered both Shelby Street corner and then wrapped around to Main Street. Perry, you know a lot about the building.
Well, I think the building was way ahead of its time. It had two big show windows, one on Shelby Street and one on Main Street. And I remember as a small child, I used to walk down and look in the windows at these new cars sitting in there. And they had a parts department, they had a filling station department, they had everything, and they had a ramp going upstairs that they get new cars in, they take them up there and store them. And it was just really ahead of its time. And then through the years, it became a grocery store and a restaurant. And
Dr. Daugherty's
Dr.
office.
Daugherty had office upstairs for about 40 years.
Peck Barber Shop.
Yeah, Jim Peck had a barber shop.
Sure did.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one little thing about it, the steps going up to Dr. Daugherty's office was really, really steep. and somebody said, Dr. Doherty has really been a good doctor. He's been up there for 40 years. And another guy was sitting down there talking said, well, I don't know. Anybody could get up them steps wasn't too sick in the first place.
They were very steep, according to Perry.
Yeah, they were steep.
But he had a casual approach that you could go in during the morning, and there was a little table with a tablet, and you would sign in your name and then come back later in the afternoon for office
Yes.
hours. It was all very casual,
That's
the way you
real.
scheduled your appointments.
Wasn't it
I
nice?
can tell one more thing about Dr. Doherty. He was our doctor, but he's also our friend, you know. And I went down there to him, and he said, what's wrong with you? I said, I think I'm taking a cold, Doc. I need a shot of penicillin and some of them pills you gave me the last time I was here. He looked at me right in the eyes and said, damn it, let me do the doctor.
So Perry, I guess you never asked Dr.
Oh, well,
for any medicine again, huh?
well, he gave me just what I said. Well, wind up.
I think you wanted to be the one to think of it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we had two great restaurants in Florence. This was our more elegant restaurant. This was Southern Trails.
Right.
Did you
Famous
ever eat
for
there,
their
Mike?
fried chicken.
Exactly. And
yeah.
as you can see, look toward the top of the picture, and there's a chick. Now, I guess that means come and get the chicken.
Yeah.
Also, as you look at the sign, there is family-style dinners, $1.75. I think maybe you can see that. And at the drive-in, I think what's playing is Pleasure of His Company and Ferry to Hong Kong, because our famous drive-in was right next door. And looking up, you'll see Robertson Hudson, where we had our they were a tire dealer, and you also see our Texaco gas station. So I love this picture. And also notice the umbrella tables out front. I guess you could have chicken out front. I think there might be some fumes out there. It's awfully close to the highway, but I did notice the umbrella tables. Our second was the Cane Tuck. It stood on the corner of 42 and 25 next to the Baptist church. Great country ham and eggs. To me, it was their breakfast. Perry, did you
Yes.
love the breakfast?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And Hilda, Hilda ran it, and she was an outspoken person. And my daughter worked up there for a while as a waitress. And if people, she thought had sat too long drinking coffee, she'd either go back there and say, you've sat there long enough, let somebody else have that place. Or she got...
Yeah, and you could do this then. Back in this day, it was so casual. Try it now and you'll probably have a lawsuit.
If she was busy, she'd tell my daughter, go get them people out back there. We can't make any money with them sitting there.
Right, right.
But you know, that picture, more people have commented on remembering Cane Tuck. Whether they were Florence residents or not, they would remember passing through on Dixie Highway and stopping there, perhaps going on vacation. That was...
Well, it had the map of Kentucky.
It did.
It drew you to it, and then the Cane Tuck, and it was like Kentucky and their name.
And the owner's name, yes.
Okay, and
Kane.
what was
It was
Kane?
Kane.
He
So
was
they-
Kane, yeah.
Yes,
And
so
it
it was
just went together.
combination of the two names.
Of the Cane
Yeah.
Tuck restaurant. Wish it were still there.
Yes.
We will talk about their church in a moment. This was one of our local gentlemen, Joe Luttrell. And anybody, his cobbler shop was right on Main, right next to where Papadino still is.
Right.
He was our cobbler. He was afflicted with polio.
Right. He and his wife both.
Both, Goldie was his wife. And Joe was an excellent cobbler. And back at that time, we had our shoes fixed a lot, and he could just touch them up and make them look, he capped all of my high heels, and then he'd say, I'll touch them up.
Right.
And that meant he'd go over them. You would go, and they would look like new shoes. But trust me, don't forget your ticket, because I did only once, my first time in Joe's, and he had pigeon, you go through the door, there was the counter, pigeonholes to the left. He had given me my ticket. I lost it. I came in, Joe, you know, I'm here to get my shoes. He says, where's your ticket? And I says, well, I don't have it. He says, go sit down and wait. And he went back to Cobbin, and he paid no attention to me until he was ready, and he came up and he says, and he went over, he must have had a numerical system, a backup system. So he gets them out, and he says, how do these look? And I paid him. Never did I forget
forget
my
it, yeah.
ticket ever again, because
Well, he was like
It's
that, you know,
intense.
he was pretty stern. And I would go up there, we would be sent up there to have our shoes half soled while we waited.
Oh.
And would say, Joe, can you hey, stole my shoes, and he'd say, yeah, if you sit over there and be quiet, but if you start making any ruckus, you're out of here.
Okay, didn't single me out, because that's how I kind of felt there. I kind of felt singled out. This was his shop, and of course Papadino's is next door, and Papadino's is still there. And Chamber and Grubbs was on the other side, the funeral home. And at Papadino's 371-5567, the best steak hoagies ever. And at that time when I started eating them, they were 75 cents.
75 cents.
It was the best. It was real steak and onions and tomato and mayonnaise, and it was wonderful.
Yes. And when we were in high school, that was the place
That
to
was
go
our-
and get pizza.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Everybody
Pizza
went to
and
Papadino's.
hoagies. We went to our Papadino's. So, Mike, is there anything that you would like to put?
Well, you
because
have
I'm-
the picture there of the Florence Fair.
Okay, Mike, you want to talk
which-
about it?
Well, this is a picture of the ring and the promenade that went around it, and I think it was a major fair in northern Kentucky. It ended in the early 30s when they began the Boone County 4-H and Utopia Fair.
Right.
But I'm
And-
sorry, go ahead.
And this was on my grandmother's father's farm, which covered about from Circle Drive to 42. It was the Carpenter Farm. It was called Carpenter Woods.
Yes.
They leased it to the fair for around, I think it went maybe 30 years, approximately 30 years. And so, and of course, like Mike said, this was a premier fair. I mean, this had 10 seats. This went all the way around. And this is the bandstand area here.
Right.
And so it was just a lovely fair for its day.
And as we were talking earlier, and Perry remembers, there was a promenade that went all around the rim of the stand, so you could walk around and visit
I
and
went
see
to the
who was
fair only
there.
one time. I went to the fair only one time, and I remember the guy at the gate, and he would let the horses in, and that's all he did, would open and shut the gate, and I was thinking, I wish I had that job.
Yeah, good job. This is a picture of the bandstand with ladies sitting here, with ladies, and I don't know if she's singing an opera, Mike, or
I
what,
don't-
or what she's doing,
Just
or if she's just flailing, you know. I
Waving
may
to her
jump.
fans, I
Yes,
suppose.
maybe, and that is that Jeannie Lale?
No, that's
Pearl
that's
Marksberry.
Pearl Marksberry.
And then
Pearl
Jeannie
Baker.
Lale,
Uh-huh.
and my grandmother, Edith May Carpenter, is in the hat. And it was her father that leased the farm to the Florence Fair. And he was William Perry Carpenter. So we do want to get in our relatives because as with Mike and Perry's ancestors, my ancestors also migrated from Virginia to here. This was the most, it may not have been the most beautiful house in Florence, but it was the most unique. Mike?
It was at the end of Girard Street, and when they extended it on through to the new Burlington Pike, unfortunately this house was demolished. We liked the picture because it has the feel of an antebellum home
Absolutely.
in Louisiana.
Absolutely.
It
It was beautiful.
It also had a swimming pool in the back of it.
did it, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Now, a doctor lived there, and Mike told me that it was also a school at one point.
At one point in the late 1800s, it was a school, a private school, before they had public school in Florence, yes.
So as I said, the book is a wonderful mix of homes, businesses, and photographs. That's what makes it so wonderful. And of course, you know, it brings back so many memories for all of us.
Right.
Is there anything else that you got, we're starting to get close on time. Is there anything else that was dear to your heart, Mike, that you wanted to bring up?
Perhaps the last two pictures that we used were purposely put at the end. The top picture shows a Boone County farmer with his team of horses plowing, and at that time Florence and the surrounding areas was very agriculturally oriented. And the bottom picture is the construction of I-75, where today's US 42 and I-75 interchange is, with the idea being that this was Florence as it existed for much of its history, and this is the factor of change that came in and into that era. So that's
Yes.
how we ended the book.
Yes. Well, we want to get one more person that is so very important to Perry, Mike, and I, and that's Virginia Osborne Lanehart, and she's the tall little girl in the picture. Her baby sister's the baby, and that's Ella Mae, and then her brother David. And Virginia has been the driving force behind the Boone County Historical Society. She has recorded, she has remembered, she has been twice president, and she is so invaluable to the Boone County Historical Society that I wanted to make sure that we got her picture in
Yes.
before we said goodbye. And Perry, is there anything else that you would like to add? Any pictures you'd like to show us? We still have a little more
Well,
time.
we don't have a picture of Pappy Shears. He was the town marshal. And back in those days, the only police officer we had in the town was the town marshal. And he was an older man, but he just did a wonderful job. Not one of the boys got in trouble, and we was all pretty rowdy. And he called me Rennie. I knew he liked me, so I knew I could do a few things I wanted to. So we in the fall of the year, we'd choose up sides and we'd have tomato fights after the first frost, and we'd throw them all over the town at one another. So Pappy told me the next year, he said, Rennie, you're not going to be able to have that tomato fight. I deputized 8 guys, and I said, who are they, Pappy? He said, you think I'm fool enough to tell you? So he was down at the corner of Main and Shelby Street and had this white hat on. One guy, I know who it was, threw a tomato straight up in the air, and he said, if I threw this straight up in the air, it'd come down on Pappy's hat. I said, 1 in a million. Splash, right on top of his hat. And he said, he jerked out his pistol and held it up in the air. He didn't point it at us, but he said, you damn boys has gone too far this time. And everybody said, run for home. We went through that alley fast as we could go, and nobody came back out.
And no shots fired.
No
shots fired.
No.
Just threatening. I know that was enough to really,
Yeah.
but you didn't throw tomatoes for a while.
No, we didn't.
One of our final pictures just has to be, because it's grown into such a landmark. You ask anybody, well, do you know where the, help me, Mike.
Wildwood.
Wildwood Inn. Oh, sure, the palm trees and all. Well, this is how it started.
Yes.
It was the Wildwood Motor,
Camp.
yeah, just in a wooded area, little cabins. And,
Yes.
and you could stop and stay all night there. So look at what that grew into.
Yes.
I mean,
And you were talking about Carpenter's Woods. This was on the very westernmost edge of the Carpenter property. And when Mr. Yaley bought that property to develop the Motor Inn, there was virgin forest. And there are pictures of him with the trees that he felled, and it is nearly as tall as he is when it's lying on its
Wow.
side. So
Wow.
that was still an area of virgin forest as recently as the 1930s. So, yeah.
I remember seeing it. There were beautiful trees, hickory trees, and all kinds of different trees are there. It was beautiful.
Right.
well, we're almost out of time, and I will show one more great. There's just some fantastic pictures in here. You must get the book if you want to go back. This is when we opened our Albers, which is at the post office site, right where the post office is. That was our first Albers. And look at the camera. Look at the size of the camera, as Mike and Tim point out in the book. Much different from the digitals we use today. But that was the home of the S&H green stamps.
Right.
And we would save those stamps. You got them when you cashed out, and then we would go to the book,
Yeah,
or
and
to the
just
store.
Save the book. There was a booklet that you pasted your stamps in. Yes.
And then we go to the store and pick out our gift. You paid with your green stamps. And Kroger had top value. They were
Right.
yellow, and the
Yeah.
S&H were green.
Yeah.
Right.
So, well,
Yeah.
I.
No, I was just going to
yes,
say, one of the
Mike.
highlights of the day for children of a certain age, the Uncle Al show was broadcast live that morning from the opening.
At the opening, and Captain Wendy was there. Well, you two have just made this show so wonderful with your memories and your knowledge about Florence. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for asking.